Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining this press conference to launch the report Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2024. The report is launched by UN Women and by the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs. My name is Navid Hanif, and I'm pleased to introduce our speakers who will give brief remarks because we open it for questions. We have Navid Hanif, Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development in the UN Department for Economic and Social Affairs. Niradzai Gumbonswana is the Assistant Secretary General and Deputy Director of UN Women. And Papasek is the Chief of the Research and Data Section at UN Women. And please, Navid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nanette, and good morning. Thank you for joining us for the launch of the Gender Snapshot 2024. And I'm delighted to be joined by the UN Women Deputy Executive Director, Niradzai Gumbonswana, and Mr. Papasek. This year marks the 6th year that UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs and UN Women have worked together on this report. During this short period of time, the publication has become an authoritative source on the progress towards gender equality across all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And let me commend both teams for their outstanding work and great collaboration. My colleague from UN Women will give you the details about the latest data and insights that are presented in the report. I want to bring to your attention the crucial linkage between gender equality and the achievement of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. I'll make 3 key points. First, gender equality is not merely a standalone goal within the 2030 agenda. It is embedded across all 17 goals. It is in fact the bedrock upon which the aspirations for a better and more just world rests. Sustainable Development Goal 5, the gender-specific goal, directly addresses gender equality, is monitored using 14 indicators. But there are additional 40 gender-specific indicators for other SDGs, such as poverty reduction, health, education, decent work, and climate resilience, that should be achieved by 2030. Second, the sobering reality is that our shortfall in gender equality mirrors our overall lack of progress on the SDGs. And this report shows that none of the SDG 5 indicators on gender equality has been met. Today, 1 in 5 girls still marry before age 18. Women carry an unfair burden of unpaid domestic and care work, spending 2.5 times more hours a day on it than men. Only 1 in 4 parliamentary seats globally are held by women. And we know unless these targets are met, full realization of the 2030 agenda will remain elusive. Thirdly, I cannot overstate the importance of accurate and timely gender data. Without it, we cannot measure, let alone address progress towards gender equality. This is why we call for increased funding and capacity building for gender data and for the integration of gender perspectives into all aspects of data collection so that gender inequalities can be addressed systematically. Finally, as world leaders gather for the Summit of the Future next week, they have a critical opportunity to renew their commitment to progress towards gender equality. For instance, the report shows that investments in food systems, to close gender gaps in farm productivity and wages would add nearly $1 trillion to global GDP and help 45 million people achieve food security. The costs of inaction on gender equality are far too high, and the benefits of reaching gender equality are far too great to ignore. Achieving Agenda 2030 in its entirety is only possible with the full and equal participation of women and girls in every aspect of society. Let me hand over to the Deputy Executive Director.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Hanif. Dear members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to the launch of this 2024 Gender Equality Snapshot. This report is not just an aggregation of data. It allows us to connect, to discuss, and to advance solutions with communities and with countries and with member states. As Mr. Hanif has highlighted, gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls and the protection of their rights fuels the progress of the Sustainable Development Goals. Without it, the SDG agenda will remain a distant dream. And women and girls cannot wait to live a world with equal rights, a world with equal voice and equal opportunities where they are empowered and with no discrimination. The report offers some cause of celebration. Women's poverty, in some instances, is declining. Girls have made important strides, some strides in education. We see a push for positive legal reforms that promote women's rights with huge benefits. For example, countries that have enacted domestic legislation have lower rates of intimate partner violence than those without legislation, 9.5% compared to 16.1%. However, as we present this report, the reality that progress is far too slow is also very evident, and we remain off track. Inequalities are increasing. Women and girls are living in poverty, and their lives are being wrecked by violence in all countries around the world. They can't wait for this discrimination and violence to end. We are racing against time. Not a single SDG 5 indicator has been achieved, and only 2 out of 18 indicators are close. Without acceleration, a girl born today will be 39 years old before women hold as many seats in parliament as men. 68-year-old before a child marriage ends, and an extraordinary 137 years before extreme poverty for women and girls is eradicated. Last year, 612 women and girls lived within 50 kilometers of an armed conflict, with a shocking 50% increase in conflict-related sexual violence, mainly perpetrated against them. A future without gender equality, where women and girls' full potential is not unleashed, is a world of missed opportunities. The annual global cost of education skills deficit is over $10 trillion, more than the GDP of France and Japan combined. Low and middle income countries will lose $500 billion in economic activity in the next 5 years if they don't address the gender digital divide. The solutions are clear. Invest in women and girls, and the world will thrive, communities will be resilient, and households will prosper. Implementing A package of policies that includes social protection could reduce extreme poverty for 115 million women by 2050, closing the gender gaps in farm productivity and food system wages could raise women farmers' income and increase global GDP by nearly 1 trillion. Investing in the care sector and in infrastructure could create 300 million new decent low carbon jobs. Having more women in decision making is the way to move the needle to SDG 5. In one of the biggest electoral years in history, this year, 107 countries have never had a woman head of state. This is an opportunity for change. As women leaders gather for the Summit for the Future next week, they must feel the pressure to take action that close the gender gaps. Whilst distant, it is still possible for us to achieve this objective. The 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Plan of Action in 2025 brings us unique opportunities to accelerate progress and take bold actions around women's leadership, green economies, ending violence against women, peace and security, and closing the gender digital divide, amongst others. As we move forward, let us remember that gender equality is not just a goal, but a fundamental human right. Together, we have the power to accelerate progress and create transformative action. We urge leaders to act now. To act now and build on today's report. The evidence is clear as evidence-based policies enable us to bring lasting change for women and girls. Thank you very much, and I hand over to Papa Sek.
Thank you very much, Nanette, Mr. Hanif, and Narazai for this. It is really a pleasure also for me to be here with all of you to launch the 2024 Gender Equality Snapshot. The first two interventions underscored the importance of gender equality, the rights and empowerment of all women and girls in the overall success of the SDGs. What we've heard is that the pace of progress towards SDG 5 is too slow, and this is really affecting the entire 2030 agenda. But the report is also not just about the problems. It is mainly, in fact, about the solutions. In it, you will find a short but comprehensive analysis of global progress on gender equality across all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, along with the policies and actions that are needed to accelerate progress. So let me just delve deeper into some of these specific findings. And I also hope that you will have the chance to explore the richness of this report yourselves. Extreme poverty for women and girls has declined to 9.8% of females from 10.3% last year. This is after strong increases during the pandemic. So this is good news. But progress needs to be much faster, as we've heard. 137 years is way too long to wait for fundamental rights. We need to adapt social protection systems, including, for example, cash for poor families, maternity leaves and pensions that respond to the rights of women and girls. If we do that, if we add social protection to a package of policies, including, for example, equal pay for work of equal value, we could lift over 115 million women and girls out of extreme poverty by 2050. The gender gap in hunger is narrowing, but remains also deeply troubling. Nearly 48 million women and girls experience food insecurity. Nearly 48 million more women and girls than men experience food insecurity globally. But investing in small-scale women producers could enhance resilience to shocks and increase global GDP by nearly $1 trillion. On education, the number of women and girls out of school has declined by 5.4 million since 2015. But still, 119.3 million girls are still deprived of education. the economic cost of that deprivation is too huge. So the economic cost of failing to adequately educate girls is over $10 trillion annually. And as Didier Naradzai has said, it is more than the GDP of Japan and France combined. And this education deficit not only stifles individual potential, it also limits economic growth. We know that, for example, that if the number of children dropping out of school early fell by only 1 percentage point, annual global labor income would increase by $470 billion annually. Maternal health care has improved globally, but it remains deeply troubling, particularly in conflict zones where the risks that the risk of women to women's health are escalating. For SDG 5 on gender equality and women's empowerment, we see also some good news. Legal reforms for gender equality are progressing. But again, here the pace is also too slow. And this is a missed opportunity for healthier, more prosperous, and peaceful societies. For example, countries that have enacted domestic violence legislation have lower rates of domestic violence. And these are countries that, again, advance faster on other development goals. Women and girls spend 250 million hours collecting water, over 3 times more than men. And along with the unpaid care and domestic work that they perform on a daily basis, this prevents them from having leisure time for themselves, limits their opportunities for decent employment, and increases their risk of injury and violence. But if we invest in care services and infrastructure, this would not only alleviate that burden for them, it could also help create 300 million decent low-carbon jobs by 2035. And this contributes to the fight against climate change. Armed conflict is another persistent problem. 612 million girls living near armed conflicts last year, and that's a 41% increase since 2015. The UN has verified 3,688 incidents of conflict-related sexual violence. That's up 50% from 2022. And in 95% of these cases are actually against women and girls. So strengthening protection mechanisms and ensuring that women's leadership in peace-building efforts are crucial elements for lasting solutions. And finally, just closing with a point that Mr. Hanif pointed out, which is the lack of gender data to monitor the SDGs and to inform policies. This is a big challenge. Countries are, on average, at a halfway point in terms of planning, producing, and making gender data available. And one of the clear challenges that we've identified is the lack of funding, including, for example, official development assistance, which is critical for increasing production and use. So, as we have heard today, this report tells us that the road we need to travel is long and is challenging, but it is also hopeful. And we have the solutions. Invest in gender equality and the rights of women and girls to turn the tide. The time for transformative actions are now. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers, and the floor is now open for questions. And if you would please identify yourself and also who you want to direct your question to. Do you have any questions in the room? Or do we have questions from participants online? Then please come in directly. Well, it seems everything is very clear. And with that, I would like to again thank our speakers. And this concludes this press conference to launch the report, Progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, the Gender Snapshot 2024. Thank you.